I sat at my apartment window, the early morning sun spilling gold across the hardwood floors. My silk blouse felt impossibly soft against my skin, a sharp contrast to the tight knot of memories twisting in my chest. My phone buzzed again, an insistent vibration that pulled me from the calm I'd built around myself. It was another message from my sister, Emily, this time, a photo from her bridal fitting. She looked radiant, but my stomach clenched. I took a slow breath, letting the city hum seep into me. The distant sirens, the hum of traffic, the faint scent of coffee from the cafe below. Life had gone on, beautifully and messily, without my parents ever noticing the cracks in mine. I had built everything they had ignored, a career that demanded respect, friends who genuinely cared, a life that I owned completely. And yet, there was still this familiar ache when I thought of the day my world nearly ended on that wet, rainy street. I hadn't called them then, not even when I woke up in that sterile hospital room, bruised and shaken, while they were busy planning Emily's perfect wedding. The hurt had been too sharp, the disappointment too raw. But now, years later, I had the power to decide how or if they would be part of my life at all. As I tapped the screen to reply to Emily, a strange mix of pride and irony curled in my chest. I had survived everything, and I had thrived. But the past. It all came rushing back. The screech of tires on wet asphalt, the smell of rain-soaked pavement, the blinding headlights that had stolen my world for a few terrifying seconds. I had been 17, driving home from school, listening to my favorite playlist, when a careless driver clipped my car. The impact sent me spinning, glass shattering like fragile stars around me. Pain tore through my body, and when I finally opened my eyes, the hospital's ceiling greeted me in cold, sterile white. I waited and waited. My parents didn't come. They were too busy coordinating floral arrangements, seating charts, and bridal gowns for Emily's wedding. Each passing hour felt like a lifetime, a cruel echo of neglect that left my young heart raw. Nurses offered kind smiles, and one elderly woman, Mrs. Carver, a volunteer, held my hand when the pain was too much to bear. She whispered softly, "You're stronger than they realize, honey. One day, they'll see it too." That hand, warm and steady, became my anchor. The lump in my throat refused to go away. My hands shook as I traced the hospital bed's rails, imagining my parents in a ballroom, laughing, while I lay broken and invisible. I wanted to scream, to cry, to make them understand, but my voice seemed swallowed by the sterile walls. The betrayal cut deeper than the bruises on my ribs. It was Mrs. Carver who left me a small, leather-bound journal, saying, "Write your story, darling. One day, it will carry you where they never could." And I did. I scribbled every fear, every hurt, every tiny victory of just surviving that night. With every page, I felt a piece of myself growing back, stronger than before. By the time I was discharged, I had made a choice. I wouldn't wait for their apology or recognition. I wouldn't hinge my recovery, or my life, on anyone who couldn't see my worth. I would build my own world, one where my pain became fuel and my independence became my armor. And that decision, forged in the quiet, lonely hours of that hospital room, would shape everything I would become. After leaving the hospital, I moved into a tiny apartment in Chicago, determined to start over. The city buzzed with opportunity, and I clung to Mrs. Carver's words like a lifeline. I had no one to rely on but myself, but that was a gift in disguise. I threw myself into work, taking odd jobs, waitressing at night, tutoring students during the day, anything that kept the lights on and food in my fridge. Each paycheck was a quiet victory, proof that I was reclaiming my life, piece by piece. It was at a local networking event that I met Claire Donovan, a seasoned marketing executive with a reputation for spotting raw talent. She noticed my meticulous notes and the spark in my eyes when I talked about a project I had freelanced on. "You've got potential, Rachel," she said, her gaze unwavering. "If you work with me, I'll make sure the world sees it too." I hesitated. Trust didn't come easily, but something about her belief in me lit a fire I hadn't felt in years. Under Claire's mentorship, I learned the rhythms of the business world. Long nights refining pitches, endless revisions, and the constant battle against self-doubt. There were days when I cried alone in my apartment, wondering if I'd ever belong in a world that seemed built for everyone else. But then came the small wins. My first major client, a local boutique chain that trusted me to revamp their brand. My first profitable project, where I finally saw my bank account swell with proof that my work mattered. My first step toward financial independence, where the weight of my parents' absence felt a little lighter. I became a ghost in their lives, posting modest updates online, careful not to reveal the magnitude of my progress. They assumed I was struggling, still the vulnerable daughter who had once been nearly crushed in more ways than one. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was thriving, and they had no idea. I decorated my small apartment with mementos of resilience. The leather-bound journal Mrs. Carver had given me, a framed quote about strength, and photographs of places I had visited alone, marking the life I had built from scratch. Through the struggles, the late nights, and the tiny victories, I realized something crucial. My success didn't need validation from those who had failed me. Each milestone, each client win, each late-night brainstorming session was a testament to my independence. I was no longer the girl waiting for someone to notice her pain. I was the woman creating her own path, quietly, deliberately, and unapologetically. And as my skills sharpened and my confidence grew, I knew that one day I would face my past not with desperation, but with power. The day they walked into my office, I could feel the tension before a single word was spoken. My parents, Robert and Linda, along with Emily, stepped hesitantly through the glass doors, their eyes scanning the room with a mixture of expectation and curiosity. They had assumed I was still struggling, still that fragile girl who had been nearly crushed, not just in that accident, but by their absence. The office was nothing like they imagined. Expensive abstract art adorned the walls, sunlight gleaming off sleek mahogany furniture. My desk bore neatly stacked reports and a crystal paperweight that reflected the city's skyline outside. Bookshelves lined with titles on marketing, leadership, and entrepreneurship framed the room. A soft hum from a carefully curated playlist filled the space, mingling with the faint scent of vanilla and cedar. Every detail spoke of a life meticulously built, and every item whispered a story of my journey from vulnerability to power. I watched them take it all in. My father's jaw tightened. My mother's hands clutched her purse, as if to ground herself. Emily's eyes flickered between awe and disbelief, and I felt a flicker of something strange, perhaps recognition, perhaps guilt. I let the silence stretch, letting my presence dominate the space. This was my moment, and I would not rush it. Finally, I spoke. "I see you're all surprised," I said, my voice calm, measured, but carrying an edge of authority they weren't used to hearing from me. "Let me fill you in." I told them about my first client, the long nights, the endless learning, the moments of doubt and triumph. I described the mentorship with Claire, the challenges I overcame, and the life I had quietly built while they were preoccupied with weddings and appearances. I spoke of my financial independence, my ownership of the agency, and my role as a decision-maker in high-stakes deals. Each revelation landed like a quiet thunderclap in the room. Their reactions were exactly what I had expected. Robert's face went pale. He opened his mouth to speak, but found no words. Linda's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, perhaps shame, perhaps regret. Emily, the golden girl, looked at me with a mixture of wonder and something like fear. I could almost see the realization settling in. They had underestimated me, and for years, they had been blind to my strength. I let them absorb it all. No anger, no tears from me, only calm, composed authority. This wasn't revenge, it was recognition. A declaration. The girl they had ignored was no longer invisible. I had survived, thrived, and now stood firmly in the power they had denied me. And in that moment, as their eyes searched mine for answers, I realized something profound. I didn't need them to understand my journey. Their astonishment was enough. Their recognition, finally, was mine to command. With the truth laid bare, the balance had shifted. For the first time in our lives, I held the power not just in my career, but over how my family would engage with me going forward. I could see it in their eyes. The unspoken plea for connection, for forgiveness, for guidance. But I knew this wasn't a free pass. Respect and presence had to be earned, not demanded. I've built a life that works, I began, letting my gaze sweep across them, and I am willing to share pieces of it, but only if certain conditions are met. My voice was calm, yet firm, each word deliberate. Robert, you need to stop dismissing people for appearances. You've spent too long prioritizing image over substance. If you want to be part of my life, I expect honesty and accountability. His face tightened, but I didn't flinch. Turning to Linda, I continued, you've always been wrapped up in Emily's world, and that's not a failure, it's a choice. But you need to learn to see the people right in front of you, to nurture relationships without neglecting the individuals who need you too. It's time to drop the perfectionism that blinds you. She swallowed hard, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. And Emily, my younger sister, looked at me with wide, uncertain eyes. You'll need to learn independence, Emily, I said softly but decisively. You've been sheltered, protected, and it's time to see the world for yourself. Don't rely on appearances or parental approval to define you. Build your own life, your own achievements, your own strength. There was a pause, and I could see the spark of understanding flicker across her face. I made it clear, this wasn't punishment. It was an opportunity. Each of them had to confront their patterns, their blind spots, and their self-centered priorities. If they were willing, I would welcome them. Not as the daughter they thought they knew, but as the woman I had become. Compassion was there, but so was resolve. I would not bend to the habits and negligence of the past. My life, my achievements, my scars, they were mine to command. By the end of our conversation, there was a tentative acknowledgement, a sense that the old dynamic had shifted irreversibly. I wasn't asking for apologies, nor was I offering unconditional acceptance. I was offering boundaries, respect, and a roadmap toward genuine connection, but only if they were willing to walk it. For the first time, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The power dynamic had changed, yes, but more importantly, I had defined the terms. This wasn't about revenge. It was about ensuring that my hard-won independence remained intact while giving them a chance to grow. And for the first time in years, I felt fully in control, both of my life and of my relationships with the people who had once overlooked me. Weeks passed, and slowly, the changes became visible. Robert began attending family dinners without checking his phone every 2 minutes, genuinely engaging in conversation for the first time in years. Linda started volunteering at a local community center, learning to nurture others beyond just her immediate family. Emily, true to her word, enrolled in a design course she had been dreaming about for years, exploring a life beyond the confines of our parents' expectations. Each step, no matter how small, felt like a victory, not just for them, but for me. I watched it all unfold from my apartment, the city skyline gleaming through my windows, a soft breeze carrying the faint scent of blooming flowers from the street below. My journal, the leather-bound gift from Mrs. Carver, sat on my desk, its pages filled with the story of a girl who had been overlooked, neglected, and underestimated. I picked it up and traced the familiar cover with my fingers, smiling at how far I had come. That small gift had carried me through the darkest moments, and now it was a symbol of resilience, proof that strength can grow from solitude. I reflected on the journey, the fear, the pain, the nights when I wondered if I would ever be enough. But every scar, every tear, every lonely hour had built the woman I had become. Capable, unshakable, and unafraid to demand respect. I realized that my parents' absence during my lowest moments had, in a strange way, propelled me towards self-reliance and clarity. I no longer needed their constant attention or approval. What mattered now was the relationships built on respect, understanding, and shared growth. And though the memory of that rainy day when I was nearly crushed would always linger, it had transformed from a source of pain into a reminder of my resilience. I closed the journal, feeling a deep, quiet satisfaction. My life was mine, crafted, earned, and protected. And as I looked out over the city, I whispered to myself, a gentle yet firm declaration of triumph. I survived, I thrived, and I will never be invisible again.